Uh, so this is going live.
Live from New York. Oh, never mind. It's not us.
So,
Philosophy Club.
So yeah, Philosophy Club. We're going to talk about mythology, religion today. So maybe my main question that I thought about is Christianity more credible than the other religions? But actually, yeah, let's talk about religion and mythology. But maybe a better question just to start is do you guys perceive that there is a difference between mythology and religion? Because these are like the two concepts that I kept thinking about. But my conclusion personally is that they're kind of the same. But maybe you guys have a different notion. What do you guys think?
There's a spectrum, right? Because even between two different kinds of what claim to be religions, there's a spectrum about how their beliefs are organized and what they depend on, and how deeply ingrained they are. I mean, I'm an agnostic. Okay, I am pretty clear about that. I don't know whether or not there is a deity, and I don't know how I would go about finding out an answer to that question. So to me, that's where the question sits. It's basically unanswerable, and being a pragmatist, I go on with my life without worrying about answering it. On your spectrum of religions, I mean, two of them that I've become actually pretty interested in lately are Taoism and Wicca. I think they actually have some very interesting things to say about the world and the people who inhabit it. And that's the part that I'm interested in. I'm interested in the people who are adherents to various religions rather than the religious doctrines themselves. All right, somebody else can go now.
Yeah, I think I think mythology is usually more just stories, whereas religion is it's a whole package deal. It's stories, morals, rules, like traditions and rituals. So it's a package deal for how a society should exist. So yeah, I'll just say that for now.
Yeah, it's more like teaching, right? Religion and mythology, just certain stories about some, events, ideas, something from the past. And religion, it's basically, there are different purposes. So in mythology, probably you get yourself familiar with certain people. And in religion, it's more about what you should do and what you shouldn't do, right?
I would agree, and I would say that mythology is it's a group of stories that can you can relate with, but there's that they're just stories. But religion is a how-to. It's a how-to that a group of people can go to and then see it as a scribe of some sort saying this is the way that we're going to do it, and it's a foundation of spirituality. So like you can have spirituality, but and you could think about the divine and all that other stuff with many other religions and with many of the religions, but there's foundations of these on how to use them and how to use it for your benefit in your spiritual practices. Religion, comes with experience too. Like the experience part of religion is the part that makes it something that's relatable. So if you can relate with something, you can experience it through those stories that are put into the religion. Yeah, it's a and there's pieces of mythology inside of religion, but we can still relate more with those stories than we can with a lot of the ones that are mythology, that are like the Zeuses and the those the Greek way of looking at their mythology, or you can look at it as a way of doing life.
Yeah, in both cases, it looks like stories and stories which represent certain ways how you should live and what's going on, what was happening in the world. I actually watch a lot of mythological, these Jordan Peterson explanations like Mesopotamian, Greek mythology, and it seems like every mythology, every religion are based on certain principles, and like these principles include ideas which we don't which we can't understand just by logic, just by science. For example, it's not certain facts which you may somehow adapt and use for your life. Like in science, for example, some basics like everything consists of atoms, and there's some mass, energy, speed of light, whatever, and it kind of may be learned through just analyzing and using it. But in religion, it's more about like you can't learn it by like facts, so you need some story, and when it's packed in a story, your brain, you just perceive it in a different way and become more kind of so you get it not by logic, but through relating to it in a kind of more probably emotional way.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off what Vladimir just said. So I think religion evolved because it was useful in helping us survive. But what it does is, like, when you tell a story, it tries to condense a whole bunch of truths together in a way that might be more clean or elegant than trying to actually like literally explain each of the truths one by one. So it's symbolic, but it tries to pack like when you hear a story like, I don't know, Cain and Abel, or any of the stories in the Bible, the giving of the Ten Commandments, it tries to pack a bunch of lessons into one story, which a lot of us today believe isn't literally true, but I think maybe historically that was the function. Now, maybe there's a better way for us to do it now that we have all this advancement, but historically that's what I think happened. So I'm going to give it to Craig.
So you also just gave a really great description of theoretical physics, right? Because it does exactly the same thing. As it tries to condense a wide variety of observable phenomena and explain it in a very small and compact a manner as it possibly can. So this seems to be more of a human characteristic. It's something that we try to do, is we try to abstract and distill out of the things that we experience, whether that is experience of, tossing a rock, or experience of why does the thunderbolt come down from the sky, or experience of how do I interact with my other people that I know, and things like that. And we try to distill those down into as simple and manageable a form as we possibly can. So in that sense, physics and religion are both similar expressions of the human element, the human fact, the human, whatever the hell you want to call it, the human condition, right? That's what we do. And so it doesn't surprise me that we would do that with everything, because that's what we do.
So you're establishing sort of a parallel between religion and science, right?
What I'm establishing is the parallel between it, or the common factor between them, is the human involved in creating a scientific theory, or B, a mythology, or a set of religious codex, right? I mean, they're all ultimately, in my agnostic view, they're all ultimately fall on us, on people, for their creation and instantiation. So what they show us are the things that are common amongst people. And again, that's the part that I find very fascinating. So it's why I'm kind of obsessed on it here a little bit.
So when you say your agnostic perspective, what does that entail?
Which agnostic? That is, I don't look at ontologically, I don't look for a religion to tell me how things actually are. And even with physics, that one, I mean, you kind of do look at physics to tell you how things actually are, but I don't expect that physics is actually going to tell me how things actually are. I think it's going to tell me about how we as human beings have perceived how the world works, and we pass that on to our next generation of human beings. And if that doesn't look very much like the same way that religious communities see how this is how we interrelate to each other and to our spiritual universe, if you want to call us, have a spiritual universe, and then they pass that on to their offspring, right? I mean, again, it's kind of the same process about how things are transmitted in cultures like that. And that's very interesting. That's where whole notions of things like scientism come up, right? That's one of the modern things that's going on is people are concerned that science has been elevated to the level of religious dogma. And in some cases that may well be true. And so again, that's another similarity between them. It's cool. It's cool looking at cultures in that fashion.
I can add one more thing. I feel like religion is a tool for evolution of the spiritual consciousness. Like, if that makes any sense to you, like it's a tool to show how we must evolve in this with our spiritual consciousness. But we must start with one layer of it first, with the foundation, and then somehow break out of that with challenging it, because you can only know something as far as you challenge it. So the only way to build a muscle is when you add resistance. So when you add the resistance, you add that weight to it and that weight against it, and then that's how you become stronger in either your faith or your disbelief of it. So that's I don't know if that made any sense to any of you guys or not.
Yeah, maybe like religion gives you a path to follow. So it's like, this is the first step, then you get to the next step. A lot of times it's getting closer to God or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think religion is just, I think it's very hard to put a solid boundary around what is religion. But I think religions have helped societies historically advance. They serve multiple functions, right? They bring people together. They teach lessons of morality. They help, like it serves some function in helping people survive. And so then the question is, are they relevant today, or are we at a point with technology where they're no longer relevant? I think that's an ongoing debate that I'm having. I personally am not super religious. I find religions interesting, but I don't know if I can have a clear argument proving that they're not useful nowadays. I don't. So, but yeah, I'm kind of open to all ideas.
Yeah, I like your idea, like path or tool. It's actually I see another similarity between science and religion. And science is basically it's just facts. So this is what we know, and religion it's not facts but meaning. So religion gives you some meaning. Like you may just find something about life, and it basically gives you ideas like what's going on. Not just simple facts, but if you go like these steps, one step after another, you may get to somewhere where, like after watching 5 seasons or whatever, you'll be able to understand yourself and the world, and it provides you with with meaning. And science is more about how just these things you may know them, and they give you certain understanding of what's going on, but they don't give you direction. But religion basically gives you direction where to go, and yeah.
Vladimir, there's something wrong with your microphone.
Can you hear me?
We
Yeah,
can.
we can hear you, but
Lot
there's
of
a lot of
static.
like,
Feedback.
Okay, I'll try to reconnect.
Okay, thanks.
I think I
That
understand.
was a good point.
Hey, Frank.
Howdy do.
different.
Frank, my man, what are you drinking tonight? Hams.
Always hands.
A
Yeah.
Ham's bear. Yeah.
It's hams when I'm on bulk and I can drink beer again. I'm a happy man. Uh,
Man, you guys you are a happy man, Frank. At least
uh,
you seem like it on Friday nights. You know, I don't know if that's the case
Good.
week, but Friday nights you're usually pretty happy. Talking philosophy, drinking hams, and bringing up H.P. Lovecraft. So I think it's justified. So
David, you've been awfully quiet here. What are you thinking about? all that?
I'm listening and learning.
Well,
too.
teach us too, though.
But I
No,
think
I'm just listening. I'm trying to understand.
I think one interesting question is what is the difference between religion and philosophy? So I think this came up in the chat a while back. I tend to think that philosophy operates on tries to make as few assumptions as possible. So philosophy, kind of similar to math, tries to minimize the amount of things that we're assuming before we make an argument and tries to use like logic as much as possible. Whereas I feel like religion often starts with a large amount of assumptions. So it's like, you might start with like a 5,000 page book as your assumption and then build off that. So I feel like that's kind of one difference between philosophy and religion.
I believe that philosophy is like it's a daily practice, a daily thing that you can like change your mind. You could go over here, you could go over there with it. But religion is one step to the next step type of deal. And when you use religion, it's it's a personal experience. It's your personal experience against this religion that's right here. You can't tell somebody how your experience with God is, but you can just, everybody has their own experience, but that's why religion is so confused, and not confused, but it's on the mass level of things. People look at it and they're just like, I can't get with that because I have my questions against it. But some other people don't have those same questions against it. They have their battle with it, and everybody's battle is different with religion. But philosophy is something that everybody can relate to on any different time of day. Any different part of their life, anybody can relate to it. Religion is like a
Wow. Okay.
path.
I mean, you were starting to say religion is confused, but religion is confused. But you know what? Philosophy is pretty damn confused too. And these days, again, theoretical physics is pretty damn confused. And to me, what I take from all that is, you know what? It's a confusing world that we find ourselves in. So the natural order of how we think about things is going to be confused because it reflects the world. And I'm good with that. I actually, if the world was actually crystal clear and clean cut, it'd be a very boring place to live. And so I'm actually quite happy with
that's no fun.
dealing with the confusions.
I get it. Yep, totally.
You guys are bringing up lots of points, like really good points. I'm just gonna go back a little bit. I mean, we can talk about the other things certainly as well, but I'm still not entirely satisfied. Like, I think I disagree with all of you in terms of religion and mythology.
I asked that question.
Good for you.
Well, because I mean, I asked a bunch of questions, I guess, or
Right, he's trying to distinguish between religion and mythology.
Oh,
the- just
the key
one
difference that distinguishes any mythology is memetics. That's why Lovecraftian mythology is referred to as such, because it allowed for countless writers to come afterwards, alter it, grow it, and other things. That's what distinguishes a mythology from, say, a set of novels in the same area or anything like that. It has to be able that people can copy and grow it. That's the key trait, as I understand it.
if that were the criteria, though, if you started with, say, the Torah, which is known as the Old Testament in the Christian religions, then you follow that on with A, the New Testament, and B, the Quran, then and by that, I think by that definition, the Abrahamic religion family constitutes a mythology.
Yep, and
and
as it allowed it
that's
to grow
cool.
and do that, that was okay. But then you also have a lot of the stuff that happens on right now where it becomes, we talked a little bit about this with Judaism and other areas where you're allowed to question, you're allowed to go off and question your religion or anything, but you have to come back to where
Don't
you're
get too
supposed to-
far.
Don't get
Yeah.
too far. You have to come back, and
Yeah.
it can be a little bit stifling where it's like the point of a mythos is it's supposed to grow. It's like organic. People are supposed to add to it. It's supposed to grow. Like how do you pronounce it? Pierre?
Yes, you got it.
Pierre. Okay. What Pierre was talking about, to me, religion to me is an individual experience, and part of that mythos is everyone adding their experiences to the religion and it coming to reflect them. That's not just religion. That'd be a mythos. That's the beauty of mythos. That's why they're so fun. But I don't know. That's just the key characteristic to me. I did the distinction thingy and drinking.
Do you think that differentiates between religion and mythology? Because and
Possibly.
Craig kind of alluded to it, but I also agree that, yeah, I mean, I don't really see how that would how that's a distinction between both of them. Like,
Does there need to be a distinction, Bruno?
It gives conditions that you could say this is a mythos, this is not. That mimetic quality. Lovecraft is the biggest one I always use because Lovecraftian mythos was a mythos. People grew and made off of it. But if you have something that when it becomes that solidified dogmatic where you can no longer add to it or anything, where you have almost an authority that would come in and say, nope, that's not the way anymore. Nope, you can't add. That's the point where it goes, no, by definition, it would no longer be a mythos.
So, well, I'm pretty sure, though, that, say, Russell Crowe was not actually Noah. So, yet that particular story has been added on to not that long ago. And so I think, personally, I think the distinction is not that important between the two.
But like, Bruno, when you say you're not sure what the distinction is, like, you can have a story but not a ritual, right? Like, you can have a story about how the world began but not have any rituals or morals or whatever associated with it.
Well, my position as of right now is actually that that's why I said I disagree, is that there's no difference. There's no difference between mythology and religion. It's just two words to describe the same thing. And the two words have different connotations, which doesn't mean they describe different things. I think they're describing the same thing. They're different words with different connotations, So, but I do believe, so this is why I'm saying this. I do believe they were the same thing, and that's an interesting idea. You guys might not think it's interesting. To me, it's interesting because I'm interested in mythology, the concept of mythology. Like, I'm very fascinated by mythology, but I'm also very fascinated by religion. But again, in my mind, especially now that I've been thinking about it, it's kind of the same thing, actually,
But like, would you call like Little Red Riding Hood a religion, or would you call Cinderella a religion? To me, those are just stories. Those aren't like.
Technically, people have built on those things in a liberal area, so it would qualify by my definition to be a mythos. So, did agree, or a lot of things.
Little Red Riding Hood gives you the Wolfman, and basically the entire werewolf mythology, all that kind of stuff, all kind of traces. And Little Red Riding Hood is an example of a werewolf story if you look at it, choose to look at it that way.
I think there's a clear distinction. Like, people take usually religion seriously and mythology like nobody cares about it, like in a practical way.
That's a good point.
And
yeah, I think I agree. That's what I'm alluding to, is that it's really just the way we look at it that is different. But again, I mean, I might change my mind and you guys might change my mind, but as of right now, like I don't really see a substantial difference between what we would call a religion and what we would call a mythology. And the examples you brought up, Michael, I'm not even sure like I would say that's a mythology in the sense that I understand mythology. To me, those are like kind of like European fables, you know, like
Can you give yourself a definition for mythology?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Do you have a definition for your mythology? What you're calling it?
I don't know if I have a definition actually. But let me try to, I guess, say like what I mean by mythology is it's kind of like religion actually. You know, that's what I mean by mythology. It's what society.
That's just tautological then.
Well, I know. But let me try to elaborate a little bit.
I'll give you the dictionary version if you like.
I'm not caring about the dictionary. If Bruno is bringing up his idea of mythology, I want to know what he's trying to express.
In a lot of ways,
Still
religion
fine.
is what I've got. Mythology is what everybody else has. I think historically, you're going to find that's how it's gone.
Exactly. Well, that's what I think is that exactly that is from my perspective, something is a religion because it's true, because it's what matters to me. You know, it is a serious business, you know, like when you talk to a Christian about Christianity, you know, it's very serious. When you talk to Islam about Islam with a Muslim, you know, it's very serious. It's the word of God, right? But when you talk about classical mythology with someone, it's more like, oh man, that would be a good movie. You know, it's not like the same. The way we look at it is different. But then again, imagine I was talking not to Pierre or Craig or David. I was talking about it with Socrates, or I was talking about it with Alexander or Aristotle. You know, someone from ancient Greece. I think their perspective would be very different. You know, they would listen to me talk about this Christianity, Islam. It would just sound like, you know, like what their mythology sound like to us, you know, and for them, religion was Greek mythology. You know, they believed in these things and they had the same connotation as our religion has to us today, you know. So I think it's really more of a matter of perspective rather than defining characteristics. It's like the body of beliefs that a certain culture gives birth to, you know.
Okay. So
Hold on,
for
one second. I'm sorry, Frank.
let's go.
All right. So I understand what Bruno is saying. Like, if you asked a Christian, they'd be like, no, you have to believe that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior. Or if you ask a Muslim, they're like, no, you have to believe that Muhammad was the messenger. You know, and if you ask, somebody that's a believer in Confucius or Buddha, you know, they have their certain way of looking at it that you have to understand and believe this in order to be a part of it, or in order to believe the way that I believe. But in mythology, you can pretty much just let your imagination do its thing when they're describing these stories.
To some extent, that's a bit of a caricature of all of those religions, because there again is a spectrum of people who belong to them. And there's a whole lot of them who are a lot more easygoing about things than that. Those are the extremists, and extremists of any kind, of any belief, are always dangerous. And it doesn't matter what their belief is. They're extremists, they're dangerous. But there are easygoing or moderate members of religions. The easygoing, say in the Greek era, the easygoing people would have been the followers of Dionysus, right? Who would get drunk and have a lot of sex, would be their idea of a proper. And Ethan is probably right in that bunch too. That would be that expression of Greek religion, and to them it would have been religion and not mythology, right? For them, mythology probably would have been what the Egyptians had or what the Persians had, or things like that. So again, I think it boils down to is religion is what I've got, mythology is what everybody else has.
It's morally and personhood contingent is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and it's very circumstantial, because look at we think of Christianity as a serious business, right? Like Giordano Bruno, when he talked against Christianity, he was burned at the stake. It wasn't even like a direct attack on Christianity, but like so many people, he couldn't talk badly about religion, or he couldn't say things that disagreed with religion. But that was like 1500. But he was a product of a Catholic culture, of Christianity. But if you look at Socrates, he died for the same reasons, right? He died because he was a heretic, and also maybe he pissed off some people. But really, the main charge was that he was a heretic, and he was also convicted to die in a more pleasant way, certainly. But it was it was not unpleasant. It was not pleasant to die. He was executed. So the Greeks took religion as seriously as Italians in the Renaissance, So there are a lot of parallels. I think really the biggest difference, similarities are plenty, but the only real difference that I see is really a matter of perspective, because like look at Hinduism, for example. Today most people talk about it as if it were a religion, right? But why exactly? Well, that's the point I'm bringing in, right? Well, you say it's a religion and you say it as a matter of fact, but what's the difference between Hinduism and, for example, classical mythology? Their components are very similar. The difference is what I'm trying to illustrate is that Hinduism is still alive today. There are people who take it as a very serious thing because they're alive today, because they were brought up in that culture. The Greeks are not here anymore. I mean, modern Greeks, but it's a different culture. There are Orthodox, but the ancient Greeks are not here to defend their old gods, like the Indians are here to defend the Hinduism or the Hindu people or so that's the difference, is that it's not an active religion, so to speak. But I think that's really the biggest difference, is if you have those people that still believe in it today or not, and that really is the difference. But really, there's no difference. That's my point.
You said there is a difference.
Well, the difference is like we call it different names. It doesn't mean those are different things. That's my point.
Yes, it does. Or never mind.
No, I understand what you're saying, because the creator of all is the creator of all. No matter what you call your God, it's the creator of all. There's only one creator of all things. But you can call him Buddha, you could call him, Jesus, you could call him, you call him what you want down here, but up there it's only the creator of all those things. Of all those things, it's the one creator. But that's just the way my
how do we know that? How would we know that there is one and only one, and not a whole bunch of them out there?
Or
and
anything.
It's me.
There you go. There you go. There's that key word that needs to be.
The problem with knowledge and any type of deity comes down to the classic Augustinian argument of the four cosmological arguments and theological arguments of the prime mover or the unmoved mover. Basically, how do you know something that essentially, for any way for it not to contradict itself logically, has to take almost a meta standpoint, a point where it cannot be part of the causation or whatever you want to call it, choice or anything within the universe prior to that. I don't know. I'm getting ahead of it. I'm going to drink more hand.
It's turtles all the way down, Frank. That's basically where that argument leads.
That's right, Russell and the old lady.
Yep.
To me, the most interesting question is, why did religion evolve in the first place? In other words, why didn't we just evolve to be creatures that just try to survive, and we just try to get water, food, shelter, we procreate? Why did religion evolve in the first place? That's my number one question.
I would say because we have questions, and questions necessitate answers. Is what I would say.
But why not just have questions about scientific things? Why not just ask about...
Because you can't just have scientific. That's the whole problem with scientism. You can't science without belief, without that abstracting, is what mathematically would call, wouldn't have hypothesis. It wouldn't have any of the areas. It wouldn't be able to move forward with any of its areas.
And science didn't just spring out of Newton's head fully grown or anything like that. Right?
No.
Science itself is the part of a long evolutionary process. And where that process began was speculations about nature. Why is it thundering? How come it's raining now? When should I plant my crops? What's a good time to go hunting? What's a good time to have babies? All those kinds of questions, which now we would look at and give scientific styled responses to.
But back in the
At the
day, you
time,
would give a hypothesis that was related to the
They
god
did
or
the best
deity
they could
or,
with what they had to work.
yeah.
So I think Ethan just brought up a good point in the chat, which is one thing I agree. Religious groups are more cohesive. Or I think religion. I think
Yeah.
religion is a kind of way of bringing people together, and often without it, everyone has their own ideas and they can be more creative and more flexible, but I feel like there's more sort of fragmentation, and I'm not sure. So
I
yeah,
like
there's
that
two questions. There's, first
fragmentation.
of all, there's what did it do from an evolutionary perspective, and then is there any of it that still applies today where we could get the same benefit from it? I think those are the most important questions. But you guys were saying you can't really have science without some kind of faith of something. Is that
You
kind
can't have JTB without B. You can't have justified true belief without belief.
without
And
belief?
I think
Yeah.
that's an extraordinary claim, Frank.
that's the basics of knowledge and philosophy. But
No, I disagree.
okay, why do you disagree?
Wait.
Oh, Mr. Professor
No,
Getty
no.
here.
Okay, so hold on.
You-
So what's the claim that you disagree with?
All right. As I understand it, and maybe you didn't, but
Yeah.
you claim that science is meaningless without religion.
Not
Or doesn't
religion,
exist.
belief.
Is that what you said? I didn't hear him say
No,
that
I
at
said
all.
belief.
That's
and
why
I
I'm
was
without
referring
belief.
to epistemology, not
So
science.
what do you mean by belief? Do you mean faith?
It could be faith. Specifically, if I'm talking about belief, what I mean is what I'd be referencing to is the ability to abstract, or pretty much the ability to utilize rational systems to model either the observed or the theoretical.
And by belief, I tend to say intuition.
Could be that too. That could be
Right?
subsumed.
It's what you think is true before you've even bothered to look to determine whether or not it is actually
It could be
true.
prima facie too. That could be part of it. That's part of the abstracting process in my mind.
I don't even understand you. I don't even
Oh.
understand what you're saying.
Okay.
And I'm a reasonably intelligent person.
Okay,
Okay.
So what are you saying then, Frank? It's like science. Can you just repeat it again? Because
Yep.
like everybody's kind of like. talking at
I
the same
said
time.
you can't have JTB without B in epistemological systems. That has to deal with knowledge. JTB goes to justified true belief, which is our system since Socrates that is widely grasped as how we figure out if something is knowledge or not. It's significant to science because as science goes off evidence in the areas of its justification, it is largely subsumed in philosophy by epistemology. The significance to that is belief, to me, plays a role in abstracting, which is something we do both in science and mathematics when we want to simplify or model things or get them into a palpable kind of away from what they are to something we can deal with on a more far out reach area. Example of this would be if I want to abstract a donut, I make a torus and I start topologically constructing around that.
You
That's
don't need an example that's that mathematically advanced. You
well,
could-
god damn it.
Well, man, I'm a little bit lost. Can you simplify it a little bit, Frank?
I am simplifying it.
we use a
Which is
sphere
scary
as a
fact, by the
prototype.
way. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. If I want to understand the world, I could use a sphere. Okay. or something like that to start grasping it. Okay, the sphere is not the world. It's what I'm using to grasp what I think the world is. The thing is, the sphere, when we're referring to belief, it is my belief related, corresponded to the world or what I'm trying to grasp, and it's referential or anything. This is contingent upon my belief, on my mental prowess, my ability to grow and have these areas. I haven't observed this. I haven't, documented this. This is actually going away from the observation in a
Are
way.
you talking about bias?
No, I'm not talking about bias. I'm talking about process essential to our mathematic and scientific processes, which is abstraction and generalization. But this is significant in that when we talk about belief, when I believe something, it's referring to a rational construct to which has no means of justification, or at least as I understand it. And abstracting is a form of which I am believing something. I am inventing something in this matter, as that you could link it to what it corresponds to, but it's actually going away to that. It's, goddamn, this is getting too advanced. Oh no.
Okay, well,
I should just stop.
Have another beer.
we can just go back to Michael's question,
Okay.
and then maybe we can go back to you. But so the question is, why did religion start in the first place, right, Michael?
Yeah, because I mean, most animals don't have religions. I think some do. I think chimpanzees might have some kind of a ritual. But yeah, most animals like giraffes or whatever, at least it doesn't appear that they have a religion, right? So why did it come about in the first place?
Well, I think that partially, and I think this is what Frank said, or maybe Craig, but there are questions, right? And we are inquisitive creatures, and we need to find answers to those questions. And I think religion, I don't know if that's all.
But
but
why
that's part of it.
metaphysical questions? Like why not just like, how do I get water, or what do I eat today? Like why are we so interested in these deep philosophical metaphysical questions? That's my question.
Well, usually we're not, or most people are not, but it comes up, I think, with humans, it kind of comes up, like, where did we come from and stuff like that.
Why don't we just ignore that? Where do we
I
come
have
from?
a funny answer to that question, Michael. Why do male birds have wildly beautiful colored feathers while most of the female birds are all plain? The fact is that it's done as part of evolutionary sexual selection. In humans, one might make the wild ass guess that maybe in humans, spending time thinking about that stuff is done for the same purpose. It has to do with it. How do you better attract a mate? And two ways you can better attract a mate is A, you can go like kill more game and be a better provider, but B, you can be smart.
Why not smart about just practical scientific things? Why
Because
smart about
they've already
philosophical?
done that, right? We've already figured out how to hunt. We've already figured out, I know how to make spears. I know how to make flint axes. I know how to go out and get game. All right. What do I do next with myself? Because I can do it, but the guy next to me can do it too. So how do I differentiate myself from that guy? And maybe one of the ways that I do that is by becoming smarter than that guy. And one of the ways I become smarter is I ask new kinds of questions that guy doesn't know how to ask.
That's
So
almost
it
like
has
a
to do with
Freudian
attracting a
perspective.
mate is the evolutionary drive behind it. That's my wild ass guess for it.
It's basically, it's all about sex.
Reproducing, yeah. And
Yeah, and you don't have to giggle, Bruno. It's okay. You can.
I'm still not mature enough not to giggle when I
Well,
say
we'll grow you up here then some. Don't you worry about that.
I think it's just part of the way we are, Michael. I don't know. I mean, can you live your whole life without thinking about those things? And you're a very evolved human. I mean, 100,000 years ago, a human wouldn't be like you, but still, we had enough in us that probably we start asking those questions, and it was just, I think it's just part of the human nature, man. I mean, it's something that a kangaroo doesn't do, but a Homo sapiens does.
But at what point in our evolution did it start benefiting us to think about, like, I guess, how did the world begin? You know, like for example, how did the world begin? You like if you ask that to a cat, if a cat could understand that question, a cat would be like, I don't know and I don't care. How did the world begin? Whatever, who cares?
If a cat could understand you, do you think it'd even want to talk to you?
No, well, exactly. But why don't we just brush it off and say whatever? Like certain things we just brush off and say whatever. But that we actually think about that. So then the question is, how did that help us?
I mean, it's.
I think it's questioning the meaning. I think that's where it's rooted, and that's why people think about questions like that. Where did we come from? How did it all start?
But why do we need meaning? Why did we even, like, a lot of animals don't really care about meaning. Like a giraffe doesn't care too much about meaning.
Yeah.
It's thirsty, it drinks.
Whoa. You're making a huge generalization here. A lot of animals don't care about meaning. I mean, how do we designate meaning? How do you designate qualia? This goes back to personhood again. Because I would say what we were talking about with religion, where we call everybody else a mythos, but you have religion, you're doing something analogous with you saying, hey, we have meaning, but all those animals don't have meaning.
Carl Sagan called that human chauvinism or species chauvinism, where my species is good, all the other species are inferior. And yeah, I have a hard time accepting that, because I've seen documented results of other species that do some pretty darn remarkable things, and I'm not willing to write them off.
Yeah.
After
No,
not
no,
even.
Just to make sure I understand, Carl Sagan said that not because he believed it was true, but to point out the fallacy of it. Is that
I
correct?
don't know. Do you know?
I don't know,
Craig?
but I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not sure either. I think it could probably have gone both ways, and the answer to that question might be different in different parts of his life, because he also was not a static individual by any means.
If it's a fallacy, I don't know it off the top of my head.
Michael, I kind of want to answer your question, because I feel like I have something. It's not the answer, but it's kind of a answer why we keep asking these questions. And, and that's the only way that we advance. Like, say if we never asked a question about the first computer, would we have these phones in our pockets with cameras on them that are our computers? Like, if we didn't ask questions about that first plane, will we even have jets that we, fly right now, that we never thought about? We have to think about advancing, and we have to think about advancing our consciousness. We have to think about advancing the way that we think about things. And if we don't question the way that we question or we think about philosophy and religion, but that we can't keep religion the same, but we advance as human beings in all these technological ways, and we got information at the tips of our fingers right now. Even information advances, words advance, the dictionary advances, everything advances. So if we just stopped, and I just feel like it would just be like a sudden stop if we just stopped asking questions. I don't know, like I just feel like we would almost cease to exist, or it would just be complacent. Complacency is like the devil to me, like I just feel like I want to keep advancing and advancing our minds and advancing the way we look at things. And if we stopped asking questions, we cease to want to grow. That thirst for that hunger for change, and that thirst and hunger for something outside of what we see with our eyes would cease to exist. And I don't think that's the way that we should go. And I think that answers the question a little bit, but I understand what you're going with. Why do we ask these questions? But because we have to keep going.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't ask the questions. I'm asking literally, why do we?
Yeah.
Because I think we should ask the questions, but just
maybe, maybe some of these questions were somewhat practical as well. Because a lot of mythologies, for example, have they place a pretty big emphasis on fertility, for example. You know, if you look at like Egyptian mythology, for example, a lot of different mythologies place a big emphasis on practical issues, you know, and it was important for people, you know, how are we going to get, you know, this food, you know, agricultural societies, you know, I'm not an expert in mythology. I would like to be someday. I'd like to read more about it, but I'm sure there is a big difference depending on the level of the civilization. You know, a hunter-gatherer civilization probably is going to have different types of gods than an agricultural society, right? Because the fertility aspect of it was central for a lot of agricultural societies, and you wouldn't, you know, logically, you know, you wouldn't find that in a hunter-gatherer society, you would think. So I think the practical element of just like answering these practical questions also informs some of this, and maybe the most, and now I'm making kind of a wild guess, but maybe the most abstract aspects of religion are kind of like a way to fill in the gaps, right? We have this fertility goddess, you know, and we have this thunder god, and you have this god of death, you know, but you have the god of the animals, but then, you know, who created these gods, right? Like maybe you have like this kind of like the Socrates of the caveman, or the Socrates of the ancient Egyptians even, you know. Wait a minute, if you have all these gods, you know, like who's the dad of all these gods, who's the mom of all these gods, you know, and maybe that's where you start having like the genealogy of gods and everything, and you start having more complex myths, you know, like the classical mythology and all that, you know. So maybe it's kind of like a process, you know. It's not right away, you're not asking all the complex questions. It's kind of like something that happens over time.
Bruno, I just posted a link for you in the chat that you should look up. It's about the cargo cults, who I think you would find to be a very fascinating bunch of people. And take some time, you have to go do it right now, but take some time and look at their beliefs and how they developed the beliefs that they did, because it's really a very interesting study in humanity.
Well, do you want to give us a summary, just like really brief, so we know?
Well, the ones that I'm familiar with basically occurred during the time of the Vietnam War, and they were basically on what would be considered by, you know, your typical white imperialist to be primitive islands in the Southeast Asia and like Malaysia and things like that. But what would happen is the U.S. plane crashed on it, and it was a plane that was carrying cargo for the American troops. And the natives found the wreckage, found all the cool stuff in it, and said, the tools of the gods. That has to be where this stuff came from. And they actually developed an entire religious belief, much like the natives on Skull Island, right? Developing a belief around Kong. These guys developed a religious belief around cargo. And after they found wreckage from other planes, they determined who their god was. And the god of the cargo cult was President Lyndon Baines Johnson of the United States. They adopted as God because he was the one who made cargo and sent cargo up. It really is quite fascinating, and there are a number of books written about them, mostly by anthropologists. But it's a very cool odd end of human behavior, and Frank is kind of going. He's almost making the moose antlers there, so I think Frank should go here.
That's right.
This is stuff like this also develops into mythologies, you know, like people start they come up with stuff, and then it becomes kind of like the cult.
We may be conflating the definition of mythos a little bit here.
I don't know about that.
So hold on. So Michael, your main question was why religion? Did I understand that correct? Or
why did it evolve? What evolutionary advantage did it have?
And I think Craig kind of just kind of answered that, which is, I think this was what I was trying to get at with abstracting. I'm a little drunk. Is the idea that basically when we have these occurrences in our world, or, you know, we were talking about how this world is not crystal clear. There's a bunch of problems with it that we need answers. We need ways to grasp or understand what's going on. And, you know, the idea gods or deities or, you know, religion essentially being, depending on how we defined it, being essentially a belief structure held by multiple people that has traditions around it or practices around it that may be a little bit too ambiguous for some people. I look and I go, well, these people are in proximity that has occurrences that they need answers to. And pretty much what happens is the people that they see as the smart people, or the people that they see as can explain this, you know, come up with that kind of hypothesis where they go, this is what happened and how it happened.
But they don't necessarily need answers. Like, how did the world begin? You could go
turtles
through
all the way down.
What?
Though the world, how the world began, we could say Noah, we could say turtles all the way down, which is just, you know, a catch-all phrase to say it never really began.
Oh, but that's I'm sorry to interrupt, Frank. You
Go ahead.
after this, but I was just saying, like I was talking about Michael. So maybe the why the so like I was saying before, you know, if you have a fertility goddess, maybe you need to explain at some point, you know, where she comes from, and that's where you get, you know, that's the link. Oh, where did this all start? You know, maybe it's not as abstract in the beginning because they didn't have the capacity or the interest to be that abstract, but maybe you start with more practical stuff, and then the natural next step is like, where did the fertility goddess come from? You know, and at that point you have to talk about the meaning or the
So it's basically what happens whenever we create a variable in an abstract system. We create a new derivations theorem. That'd be your answer, Michael.
Is it like we need a certain level of coherence in our thoughts? Like, we can't have just something.
Yes.
When we have too much outstanding and unresolved, that our mind can't handle it. We have to have a level of coherence. So, like, so you create a religion and you say there's this Jesus guy. Okay, where was he born? But like, you have to fill in the gaps. You can't have all this unresolved stuff in your head.
Exactly. And in order to understand the flow of the river, you must return to its origin.
Okay.
So for those of you who like modern cosmology and things like this, for Bruno's question about, hey, where'd the fertility goddess come from? If you don't think the term Big Bang is specifically designed to evoke sexual imagery, you should probably rethink what you've been taught, because the fact is that kind of imagery is so powerful that it even permeates one of the, I mean, cosmology is considered pretty hardcore science these days, and yet they still use that same sort of storytelling idea to, and I think Frank kind of mentioned when Frank was talking about memetics before, that's precisely what this is about. This is how you get memes to hand down from a generation of teachers to a generation of students and things like that, is you give them catchy and occasionally titillating names.
well, like the Christian mythology, right?
Someone's got some music on.
Carolyn, we're listening to music.
Oh, oops.
Hello.
Hi, Carolyn. But
Sorry,
yeah,
I'll mute it.
it's okay. The Christian mythology, for example, there's a lot of stuff in Christianity and Christian mythology that didn't come from the beginning. I mean, a lot of it was added throughout time, you know, throughout the centuries, you know, in order to
Dante, Milton, the good shit.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that this is kind of like I'm trying to reinforce your point, Michael. I think that's a good point, you know, and kind of like what I was talking about before. But the whole coherence theory, I think we're onto something, because if you look at Christianity, a lot of the things that we imagine as being Christian right now, or part of the Christian mythology, angels and demons and who's the father of who, and where these creatures come from and all that a lot of that is I don't think it was there in the beginning. And again, I would like to have a better understanding of the whole thing. Not a lot of people do. I mean, because this is like a lot of people talk about religion, but they haven't really studied, because it's so complex and it's hard to go back 2,000 years to all the sources. But the reason why it's so complex is because you have 2,000 years of people just adding stuff to the story, so it's never still. And sometimes you get like crazy stuff like Mormons and stuff. I'm sorry if there are any Mormons here, but like there you have all these like offshoots of like crazy stuff going on, that this is like a really like a very sprawling mythos, the Christianity, Christianity in general. And that's just talking about Christianity. Look at Islam, they have different kinds of Islam, and people are always like modifying the story and trying to make it more cohesive. Yeah. So yeah, I think that goes to show that, yeah, I think you're onto something.
But yeah, I didn't have an answer. It was just a question. Yeah, like
why didn't you just make an answer up?
So there's like a human desire for coherence. It's like if we're going to build a little bit of a story, we have to complete the story to some degree at least. We can't have a story with too many loose ends. Like,
too many gaps.
Yeah, we want to fill in the picture, I guess. Because like why the world started, do we need to know that? We don't really need to know that, but it's kind of like if we can fill it in, why not? I guess it's like.
Well, look, let me. I'm sorry. Were you done?
Yeah, I was done. Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm sorry, I kind of interrupted you, but what you just said made me think of G.R.R. Martin. When he was building the world of Game of Thrones, or Song of Ice and Fire, the whole Westeros thing. That's exactly what happened. That, and look, that's a mythology. It's a completely made up mythology. It's, just stupid fiction. But it's not something that you're gonna teach your kids. We're not, we don't believe that it's reality, right? Like in real mythologies. But
is he allowed other people to add to it?
He has.
Okay.
So that's a good example of a very fictional mythology. Everybody knows it's make believe, but in some sense, it's interesting for our discussion because he started just with the idea of kind of like a medieval sort of world, with strange seasons and these medieval sort of like kids finding these wolves, on the snow and finding the wolf pups, that's what he started with. He's talked about it at length. That was the original scene of the whole thing. And that's all he had really in the beginning. And then he came up with sort of like the Westeros thing and Winterfell. And that was all he had at that point. And then after that, he came up with the other continents and then, all the different eras. Oh, and the Targaryens. Okay, so there were like dragons. So why were there dragons? Where did the dragons come from? And he started adding stuff. And then at some point he had Targaryen kings, but the Targaryen kings were like isolated. So he had to come up with like a genealogy line, like a genealogical tree. And then he had the names, but he didn't have the stories. So he had to come up with the stories, so this is exactly what we're talking about, right? You start with one thing or a couple of things, but then you have to fill the gaps, right?
In the beginning, George R.R. Martin only had.
Maybe storytelling is like a part of our DNA.
It's completely make believe, right? It's not. We don't pretend this to be the truth, but the process of creation of the myth is very similar, I would say.
Like maybe storytelling is like something that's in our DNA, like we're designed to be storytellers because, and maybe that gives us an advantage because it gets everyone on the same page. Like when everyone has a common story that they all understand, it's like it gets everyone on the same page. I wonder if that's part of it.
Well, and you have to wonder how language came into being and what language came into being for, right? Because maybe that was the early development of language, was to be used in telling these stories. And right? We can communicate to each other on the hunt, but what's the point of communicating to each other on the hunt if we can't brag about it to our girlfriends afterwards? And so we can then make up these elaborate stories to do afterwards. So it also has to do, I think, in parallel with the development of language came the development of mythologies and the development of asking these first philosophical, scientific type questions. And I think they're all related. So there.
Possible.
Sounds interesting. So I'm interested in Vladimir and David, what you guys, and Pierre also, what you guys have to say.
I'm just trying to understand what you are talking about, because for me, again, this whole stuff about evolution and the idea that why do we ask questions? It's like, so everybody may just came up with different answer, like why exactly he or she asks questions. And religion is the way to, like, it never was an answer for me. Like, I didn't try to really find deep meaning in religion, though I try to practice some Buddhism, for example, meditation, and trying to, really get deep into this idea of getting rid of thinking and trying to just, perceive things as they are, trying to stop asking the questions, trying to make my mind still. But still, again, it's never worked for me, and created even more questions. So whenever you have an answer, as you said before about this Game of Thrones story, right? First you came up with some idea, then you have to came up how this idea came across, and then you go on and on, and it seems to be like infinite process. Yeah, for me, it's I basically try to see what's going on in my life and understand it through tools which are available for me, like in science, or just think about things on my own, trying to realize what I'm doing and why I'm doing that. So in religion, it's basically, again, there are different stories. Some of them I may find attractive and interesting and maybe somehow related to my experience, and others are just trying to, like, not to think too much, because again, as you start thinking about one story, you get more and more involved, and you want to understand better, and it just makes you, like, just blows your mind. Basically, you just thousands questions which may have no meaning at all. Like, you watch this TV series endlessly, and most of them, they just don't have any connection with what's going on in your life. So as I said, I basically focused on my own life, like what I'm doing, why I'm doing that, and I'm trying to avoid superfluous information. But again, it's like in religion, like the purpose, why did it came, why do we ask questions? I guess it's like we may always ask these questions, and we'll never have a certain answer, and that's the purpose of religion. Again, just tell you what's going on, what we are doing, why we are doing that, and everybody has their own ideas. And as Craig said, like, just to attract female, just tell some beautiful story and say, this is true, this is what you need to do. So,
but is that why you think it is, to attract some beautiful female?
No,
my question isn't. I'm not making any claims about whether we should or shouldn't do religion.
Yeah, it's like your question, how it evolved, why do we ask questions, and how religion, No, I might say I don't know. It's like, to be honest, I'm trying to figure. I basically, like, I'm not an agnostic, but I'm more like, skeptic and ancient, like Sextus Empiricus sense. Have you heard of this guy, Sextus Empiricus? Like Pyrrhonism, like there's no, like, all philosophy and science and knowledge, it's basically like questionable. So whenever you have, like, Plato has one idea about what's going on, Aristotle has another, and everybody, like, says this is truth, but in reality, we never actually know what's truth. And according to Sextus Empiricus, like, every time when when you claim something, you need to have a proof, and to have a proof, you also need to have a criterion at which you use to, like, explain the proof. And it's like, again, it's like if you claim something, you have to defend it, and defending it, you have to have some ground, and to have this ground, you have to prove that this ground is sound or valid, and it goes on, and you can never come up with an answer. So in my case, I try to understand what's going on, but I pretty much aware that any answer is like it's not a final answer, and final answer it's kind of it's impossible to achieve, and so that's how I think.
I would agree, except for with proofs and valid and all that. I would say there is actually an end to the means of justification in our systems, which is the assumption, the axiom. When we just go, that's true, regardless of any form of justification. That's
Yeah,
what
but
they
again,
are.
we just agree on it. It's like
No, there's no
because
agreement on it.
consensus-
You're
no,
just
I mean-
doing it.
I mean, it's like consensus, but it's not. It's just in our minds. It's not real. It's not out there. It's just our idea that we, as you said, believe this like belief, right? So we have something that we conceptualize, that we abstract from, but this thing which we abstract from, we never know what it is exactly. And we can
Well,
always
it's that
abstract-
that the assumption isn't abstracted from anything. It is the thing. It is just up right there. It's a rule of inference applied to any logical problem that we need to have just to start a problem in any way. I don't know.
You
this-
can say it's like there's no substance. It's always like even well, there's some kind of idea still which you have behind this assumption.
I think at the end of the day, we all want to become the best version of ourselves, and our best version of ourselves it tends to expand our cerebral capacity to a like we want to be cerebral to a point where we know all, the beginning of all and the end of all. So we want to know all of that, like the origins of who we are. That's obviously it's something, because that's why people are looking up their genealogy, trying to figure out where they came from and stuff, because there's something to it. There's something to knowing that it's a foundation that we can launch off of and advance our minds to the to a point where we've never been before. And that's the biggest part of asking these questions, are to find things that are applicable to our life, so we can advance ourselves and give it to our offspring, so that they have a better chance of using this information that we're just now finding useful to ourselves, and we give it to our offspring, and they're able to take it and excel, off of the shoulders of giants, so they're able to see the obstacles that we were able to face, and we're able to, as human beings, find the truth, the light, because there's so much in the truth or in the light. When the truth hits us, we don't, we know it when we feel it. If the truth was already said, if everything was already, the truth was already said, we wouldn't still be talking. We always trying to find the truth. We're always trying to find something that made us feel the way we felt when we first gained our first piece of philosophical information, or just like, man, that was deep, I need more of that, so it's the thirst for in our part of our minds that once we feed that, we can't stop feeding it. Just like when we were kids, we were born into this, or if we were born into a religion, we fed that Jesus, or we fed that Buddha in our heart, we fed that Muhammad in our heart, and then all of a sudden we went away from it, and all we did was start starving that piece of our heart. But the thing is, when it came back, we started feeding it. It was never dead. It was just lying dormant, waiting for you to feed it again. That spiritual part of us always wants to grow and know what truth is and feel truth. We want to feel truth, and I think that's why we stay asking these questions and trying to advance and understand the origins and the ending, and we still want to know what's after. There's that little piece of us who wants to know what's after, and is this after? I'll keep going about after if we want, but
No, I like that idea. I like the idea that well, I don't know if that's what you mean, but what I was thinking while you're saying that is that there's like a process to this, like sort of like an evolution of ideas, right? So the questions are actually the same, some of these questions are the same, right? Where do we come from? That's the question that we're still asking ourselves now. It doesn't matter if it's now, with evolved, Homo sapiens that have evolved technology. It doesn't really matter if it's now or 100,000 years ago, when we're probably still, well, maybe my chronology is wrong, but maybe we're still in Africa, everybody, we're like different kinds of humans. I mean, it doesn't really matter, like the core is still there. The core is the same, and we're probably not going to be the same in 100,000 years from now, right? We're probably going to be a lot less athletic, I imagine, because we're developing our brain so much and moving our body so little. So, but we're going to be different creatures, but the core is still going to be the same. We're still going to be asking ourselves, where did we come from, right? I mean, the questions are going to be the same. And we start with religion, we had mythology. Now we have science, we had all the philosophy, and we're probably going to, I don't know what else we can find, but we're probably going to find other ways of answering these questions. But the process, maybe it's not so different. We're just trying to answer these questions. That's an interesting idea that kind of came up to me while you were talking, which is what you said, but this is my interpretation.
Oh yeah, it used to take us years and decades to get information passed from one part of our ancestry to the next, and then all of a sudden we were able to write books, and we were able to take 5, 10, 15, 20 years of somebody's life and read it within 5 months, or a week, if that, and then we're able to, we're able to click, and we're just able to get information, at the second, changing information. And so we're advanced so much in information that now there's another step now. We got to find a foundation though to launch off of. Then once we find that truth, that we're all able to be like, okay, this is it. We'll be able to launch to a new level, and our children are going to be able to take it there and start asking questions based off of what they were born into. And then boom, it will go to the next level after that. And there's levels to this. We're just one part of it. We're just one part of it.
I like what you're saying, Pierre. And that reminds me of all the creatures on Earth, we are the only ones that pass something on to our offspring other than our genes.
Yes.
We have writing. We can communicate at a distance and through time.
Yes.
And we have the advantage of knowledge that our great grandparents, and most creatures don't have that. Some do, but not in the same way we do.
Right.
I like that. We pass on more than our genes.
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, that's the thing. I think I'm passing on quite a bit or y'all are passing a bunch to me, and I'm passing a bunch to you. None of you are my offspring, at least I don't think. None of you are my biological kin, at least I don't think.
Seems
And-
unlikely.
Very
But look, we're intellectual kin, man. Maybe
when
not
did you
biological.
have the Big Bang, Frank?
What's up?
When
Yeah,
did
when
you
was
have
the last Big Bang there? But, yeah.
I mean, look, if we go back
I have
far
an
enough,
active
actually,
social life. Don't judge me.
Look, if we go back far enough, we're all kin, probably, to some extent.
Yes.
I mean,
so you're not that far off.
Like, yeah.
I mean,
So,
that's the thing is, like, I don't know, like, I think information theory, the idea that we pass things on from generation to generations, the way we do it through memetics, we do it through epistemology, the ways that we do it through conversation and language especially, is a huge part in what has aided humans in evolving throughout the years. I don't know if evolution, evolving would be the right word, growth, maybe. Evolution might be too loaded. Growing intellectually.
Cultural evolution, it's a thing.
Okay, I'll just call it that. The hell of it. The thing is, go ahead. Sorry,
No,
Abraham.
go ahead.
The thing is with cultural evolution, where we watch stages of evolution biologically from people, and we watch the growing of people's DNA or genes or anything as they're passed down through their biological fitness. If you take to the Darwinian construct, which I think a lot of you do, but if you do, then you watch the passing down to biological fitness and people basically pass this on. The lovely thing about information to me is it's something that potentially, on the basis of belief, any person can do to any given person, that they can have that form of communication with, language, or they can in some way interact with, that what they know can somehow be exchanged with that person. Basically, it's language mating. Next time you talk to someone, say, hey, fun language mating with you. But
What do you think poetry is, man?
oh yeah,
With
that's
all
some
due respect to
good-
Vladimir, who is, of course, our resident group poet. Right, but the famous line in
Vladimir's a
what was
poet
the Robin Williams
Nietzsche.
film? What's the purpose of poetry? To woo women, right? That's what. Shoot, what was the name of that Robin Williams film?
that was that Dead Poets?
Yes, the Dead Poets
Dead
Society.
Poets
Yes.
Society. Yeah.
Brilliant film.
If
His
you
best
take,
film, in fact, I would
if
say.
you take after Nietzsche, the entire point of the Socratic method was to get Socrates laid.
Didn't pan out too well for him, did it?
Nah,
Big Bang Theory.
Never know, man. You
Big
never-
Bang Theory.
Well, I
Right.
mean, Alcibiades, maybe, I don't know, but
and Cohen's.
So-
You guys
say that
heard
again.
about
that's
that?
right.
again?
What was
Zen
his? Yes.
Zen Cone is a question that doesn't have a right or wrong answer. It just creates a new neurological pathway in your brain.
Yep.
Dialetheism. That's
So
what Cohen's can tend to be. Yep.
yeah. So this is one that I heard. I think that you guys will like this one. So imagine a goose in the bottle. How do you get the goose out of the bottle without cracking the bottle open or popping the cork off to get the goose out the bottle?
Well, you asked the ghost nicely to phase through the bottle, and of course it does,
I'm
because
a
all
lot more
ghosts can
interested-
phase.
I'm a lot more interested in how you got the goose in the bottle.
That's a
Good
good
one.
point.
And so the thing was, the goose was never in the bottle. I told you to imagine the goose in the bottle.
Mm.
Oh,
Kind of like
I
our
know.
problems, God never comes down and says, "Oh, David, you've been a good boy. Frankie, you've been a good boy." He just kind
I
of
have
shows
been
you
a
that
good
you
boy.
that you never had him, like the goose in the bottle.
I like it.
Or
I mean,
imagine-
that's similar to something I've heard in philosophy a lot, which is the problem of imaginary characters, which is I'll often ask people when I'm trying to explain things like abstraction and levels of abstraction, subderivation to them, is I'll say, I'll come up to them or counterfactual, sorry. I'll come up to them and I'll say, if I said the phrase to you, Harry Potter has a lightning bolt scar, would you say this phrase is true or false? And a lot of people will be like, well, it's true. Yeah, there's a character called Harry Potter and he has a lightning bolt scar. And I'm looking and be like, nope, Harry Potter is a fictional character. Ergo, he cannot have a lightning bolt scar by definition. And a lot of them look and they go, how the hell does that follow? And go, well, if I said Harry Potter, what I actually mean is J.K. Rowling wrote a book, and inside it, there's a character called, oh God, I'm going modal logic. There's a character called Harry Potter.
I'm still stuck at
Abstractions.
when I ask people what I'm trying to explain.
Yeah. Uh,
Oh my.
Let me
Hold on. Oh dear God.
No, you're right. It's modal logic, Frank, and
Uh.
modal logic is fine.
I love it.
So is there a reason why we should think, or we can think, that one religion or one type of mythology is superior to another? Like, for example, is there one reason to think that Christianity is true and Islam is not, or to think that is there one reason that why Buddhism is true and Hinduism is not, and so on and so forth? Basically, one religion is true and the other ones are false. How can we justify? There's a lot of people that justify
Ooh,
that.
David, go for it, man.
But I would like to see if any of you think there is a reason why we can do it.
I don't.
Yeah, neither do
Uh,
I.
To quote Carl Sagan, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And I have been listening and trying to hear some evidence for believing in something for which there is no evidence. Faith. And I haven't heard it. I'm still listening, but I haven't heard it yet. I like Craig, I'm an agnostic, but I am more than that. I used to be agnostic about Santa Claus. And then I realized there is no Santa Claus. And I used to be agnostic about a celestial teapot orbiting Mars. And I'm not agnostic about that. I'm an atheist about that. And people in the past, believed the extraordinary things, which have been described here as mythology and passing off. But at one time, people believed in Zeus the same way Christians believe in Jesus Christ. And people believed in Thor the same way people believe in Jesus Christ today. But I'm not just an atheist, I'm an atheist. And we are all atheists with regard to Zeus or Thor. I'm just one God more an atheist.
Yeah, that's a common argument among especially the later 20th century atheists. And it ain't a bad argument as arguments go. And personally, I'm fine with, I used to hold that very belief myself. And then I realized, but that's also in its own way just as dogmatic as saying that I
totally disagree.
I believe that Noah is my Lord and Savior. Ultimately, I think the question is unanswerable, and the fact that it remains unanswerable and essentially permanently unanswerable to me says, well, I'm going to spend my time doing something else with my time than worrying about the answer to that question, which is unanswerable.
Able that I'm gonna just bring up. So David, so David is referencing the logical consistency of the religion rather than the utility of it. And I think we're getting to, like, if you listen to most debates between atheists and theologians, the theologians will admit almost from the start, like, I can't beat you, with reason. But the theologians will often argue for the utility of their religion. And I'm pretty sure, just having spoken with you a lot, that you think or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe like we're in an age where science has advanced enough where the practical value of religion is declining. So in other words, like a lot of people have said there's better replacements for it now. Maybe it worked in our evolutionary past, but now we're getting to a point where there's better alternatives to it. I think that's the interesting question. Are we so I guess one, yeah.
Let me put it this way. And this may not be true of all religions, but it's true of the religions that I have encountered, that they make a statement about how the world began and how people were created. And they don't provide any evidence that's suitable for me.
But most theologians will admit that. They'll say we don't have evidence. Most theologians will actually start with that point. They'll say, yeah, we don't have evidence, but we do it because, and they'll often argue for the utility of it. So,
well, if you do that, you can make any claim you want to and say, yeah, I don't have evidence, but you should believe this all the same.
But they will argue for the utility of it. So they'll say,
but the utility of it is not what makes it true.
Right. Yeah. So that's sort of the
to them, though. To them, their experience with how they used it, it makes it true for them, and that could be so powerful depending on what story they're telling about it.
It certainly can be, but I have to ask, if that's what makes it true for them, why hasn't their God made it true for me? Why is he speaking to them and not to me?
Powerful. That's powerful. And that's when people are able to pass off their beliefs to the next person. And it does become true for the next person, and they're able to use virtue and principle to get to their next, the applicable part of it, and they're able to use that to get to feel their God, and then that's when it becomes powerful, and then that's when it becomes more than a faith. It becomes like we share the same God, and but I wanted to go into why I believe that, because I think it's a follower thing. I think it's really easy, like why people think that one God is stronger than the next God, stronger than the next God, is because if I get you to believe in my God, and then my God is true, and I get you to believe, and I get them to believe in my God, and then that makes us stronger, and there's power in numbers. So like if you get power in numbers and you got people on and all you're trying to do is get people to believe you and follow you, so that's why I think that one person would say that my God is stronger than your God, and so they make it an us versus them thing. But,
do you think it's just about belief, like getting a bunch of people to believe rather than understanding and maybe like whatever you think truth is? Or do you think it's more belief and getting more people to believe in something rather than analyzing it?
Yeah, so when you try to get somebody to believe in something, you have to have them have an experience. So like in order to get somebody to have an experience, you got to have some like type of control over their schedule in life. But I you know what I mean? But
yeah.
It's kind of like you got to make it applicable to their life. And so that's why people, when they try to get people to join their religion, they got to be around them all the time. You got to always come here. You got to be at church on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays with me in order to believe like I believe. You got to do as I do.
Donate a certain amount.
Say again?
Donate a certain amount.
Yeah, you gotta invest your time, and your investment of time, there's power in that. There's power in what you invest your time in. So
do you think
Go
Okay,
ahead.
I'll ask. Yeah, I was wondering, do you think it's hard to convert someone after a certain age, after they already invested a certain amount of time in whatever else they believe in? Do you think like it's even possible to convert them? And if not, then what happens if you
It,
don't?
it is possible, but they have to go through a life experience, and nobody can force life experience. You can't like force them to go through something that made them fall, and then all of a sudden you're just like, you need Jesus, and and then you could be the bringer of Jesus into their life. That kind of stuff happens organically. And if it's not organic, the person is going to feel that you're trying to drag them into something that they don't want to be dragged to. People want to come to it. People want to come to things like religion, and that's something they want to come to. But when it comes to you trying to whip it onto somebody, they're not going, that's one thing that, it's they can only pretend for so long. They'll pretend like they're feeling it, but just to appease you. Those are the people pleasers. They will please you and be like, yeah, it's working. The Jesus thing is working for me. Thanks, man. You gave me exactly what I needed, but it's just they have to want it. They got to want it. That's something that you got to desire within your heart to want to know God better, or you want to know how the universe works, and that's something that somebody just can't throw at you and be like, here, today we're gonna learn how to understand the universe better, and you're gonna be like, hell yeah, understand the universe better. Like, it's something that you got to desire from within, from the heart.
So let me just ask before we're probably going to sign off for the evening fairly soon here, but let me just run
let's
one
say 10
question by
minutes.
you all.
Let's say 10 minutes. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
I'm going to run a question by y'all, and you can maybe think about it for next time. What do you think is more powerful, truth or belief?
Belief.
Because I don't know that
Belief.
there's not a simple answer to that question, but I think we're going to get a consensus here. Although I bet not a 100% consensus.
I mean, if we conclude that it was true, it'd actually be fallacious, as it would be ad populum, but I'm going to say it's belief.
I'm gonna go with
Wait,
belief too.
Can you repeat the
I don't
question?
think
So
there-
what's
Crazy thing.
more important?
What's more powerful?
Powerful,
Belief.
okay.
Yep.
Oh,
What do you mean,
powerful.
Kirk? What do you mean by truth? Again, it's like for
What
you.
do
Yeah.
I mean by truth? All right,
Yeah.
I'm going to give you my definition of truth. My definition of truth has to do is pretty much strictly empirical.
Use it.
That my justified true belief notion of knowledge. Belief is intuition, justification is logic, and truth is empiricism. So that is, in order for me to think I know something, I first need to intuit that it is correct. Then I need to come up with some kind of a justification or rationalization or logical argument for it.
Basically,
And then I need to throw it up against the wall and see if it sticks.
So
Right.
basically,
And
you're
if it
saying-
does, and if I can do all of those things, then I'm going to think about claiming knowledge.
So
Okay,
basically, you assign truth to senses, right? So you say
For me, truth is basically a Bayesian probability for it, which is based on my belief, which is my prior Bayesian probability, and my empiricism, which is my experimental result, and my truth comes out as a result from that Bayesian calculation. So
Yeah, but
I'm a little
let me
funky
put-
about how I
but
do
still,
that.
it's very hard to differentiate, right, between belief and truth. And for something that you call truth, for somebody else may be a belief, and what somebody for somebody else.
I suppose you could say subjective and objective if you wish to look at them that way, where subjective is I believe, objective is what overlaps about everybody's belief.
Yeah, but for
and
a
does that
subject-
make it
for-
objective?
For a subjectivist, the word objective doesn't make any sense. So if like
Let
you're
me
a
put it this
subjectivist,
way.
you may say
Let me
that
put it
everything
this
is
way.
subjective.
What do you think it is?
Like-
How would you
Truth?
answer?
I don't
How would
know.
you pose that question?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure
You
out.
think the question makes no sense?
If
I
I
think
Is
the
it a
hear-
fair
question,
answer?
like,
Sorry,
okay,
Dan.
David, go on.
if I hear hooves coming down my street, my first thought is not unicorns. My first thought is horses. Because unicorns don't exist.
You believe they don't exist.
No, I'm pretty sure they don't.
Do you believe unicorns
there-
exist, Frank?
No, I don't. My
Okay.
expression of
All right.
the my expression of the abstract is that there is not an existence of X where X is to be unicorns.
Okay,
or A
let's
where
don't go to that. Let's don't go down that rabbit hole.
I mean, dragons are cool, but they don't exist unless
Hey,
talking about
narwhals exist.
Komodo. The Komodo dragons exist.
That being
Komodo
said, if we
dragons
were to
exist.
qualify unicorns with the fictional character unicorns, then yes, I would say they exist.
I think, like as for me, for example, the difference between belief and truth is more about experience. So whatever is a part of your experience, it's just truth for you and for everybody else, and it's purely subjective. And
I think belief is a little more powerful. People use belief to push different agendas, political agendas, and they do generally extreme stuff, I feel like, and that generally falls under belief. It doesn't really fall under truth. So people, every group of religion, has people who do some crazy stuff because of their beliefs, and it's not necessarily because of the truth, right? I feel like that's where that would belong. But belief is a lot more stronger, absolutely.
Carolyn, you wanna weigh in?
One thought that crossed my mind during the conversation was religious people sometimes say that spirituality is kind of outside the scope of logic, I guess.
My interpretation, you said, I think first we believe and then we speak, and when we turn things into words, that takes, away from the belief. The belief is there first, like you were saying, intuition, and then the belief that I can even speak these words is coming before these words come. There's one that comes before the other, and the belief is so much stronger because it's something that is inside of you and it comes first, and then it's the truth afterwards, but it's your experience based on that belief.
But I can speak of something I don't believe in. I can be disingenuous, or I can be devil's advocate if I want to, or something like that. I can be that representation of something that I don't actually believe in. I just kind of want to fuck with you.
That's one of the
before
things
you
that
do
annoys me the most, man. When someone is having a conversation and he tries to play devil's advocate, I think
I do that a lot. Yeah.
I don't
But I try to be
I don't
honest
perceive
when I
that
do
from
it.
you, so that's funny that you say that.
Do you at least announce me prior to doing it that, hey, I'm going to be playing devil's advocate, so you at least let people know that you're going to be disingenuous and representing your moral self and thus unauthentic?
Yeah,
Michael?
I usually do.
But you should do that all the time.
He does
I
with
agree, I
everybody
agree.
except you.
Yeah.
At least I don't notice that you do that, Michael, so I can't get annoyed at you.
The
I
truth
get
will
annoyed
set you
when-
free, Michael. Damn it.
I get annoyed when I see that people are doing that. But well, my interpretation of your question, Craig, is like, what's more powerful, belief or like the pursuit of truth? The legitimate pursuit of truth. And I'm sorry if that's not the question. But that's how I interpret it. But if in that interpretation, I would say belief is more important for most people. I would say some people, pursuit of truth is probably more important. Like that's the case for me, I would like to think, but that's also the case for most of you, I think, or for all of you, because I think people that pursue philosophy are usually concerned more with the truth of things, not their a priori conceptions, right? Their a priori thoughts. Because if you're having a priori thoughts, that's not really you're not really trying to get anywhere, right? At most, you're trying to figure out ways to argue your a priori thoughts to beat other people in arguments. But I mean, I feel that's like a pretty pointless thing to do in life, unless you're a lawyer or politician.
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry, Pierre.
neither of those things. That actually wasn't the question that I asked, but it's an interesting thread. And speaking of interesting threads, at some point, sorry to steal other people's time, I've seen you've been doing these little one-on-one chats with people like that. If you want to arrange to do one sometime, let me know and let me know what you'd like to discuss, and I'd be happy to do one with you.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll do it with anybody that wants to do it with me.
Yeah.
Are you guys familiar with terror management theory?
Yeah.
It's like
I forget-
Michael.
What
Is
now?
that Freud but it's the theory that it's like a psychoanalytic theory that all the
Oh.
actions we take are designed to minimize the fact that we're terrified that we're going to die someday.
So completely without testability or any risk factor. Got it.
Right. No testability, very psychoanalytic in nature.
Yeah, I think it helps to answer your first question about what's the meaning of religion, how it evolved and why it evolved. So as soon as we're aware that we're all gonna die, there should be some, justification for our life. And according to this theory, like whole thing about culture and everything we create is just our way to cope with this awareness of our death, like to leave something behind, some legacy or whatever. And yeah, it's like kind of our way to cope with this anxiety, this fear of death. And religions actually, most of them are concerned with this question, like what's the afterlife, what's there. And probably it's like even in mythology, it's also, there was in Greek mythology, there was underworld where it wasn't it wasn't good to get in. Like I guess it was Achilles who said, like, I'd like to be the last man here on earth than to be the king in this underworld.
Yeah, that's actually one. We nobody brought that up, but that's one way in which religion is far superior to science or philosophy. Really, is like it gives you basically gives you a nice thought that when you're gonna die, you have a justification for the whole
I
thing.
disagree.
So do I.
So
Yeah, I would say Fado right off the bat knocks that out of the park. So,
man, we got to talk about that.
Well,
we don't have
probably one of the
don't
most
have any more
beautiful
time, but-
works of why you should not fear death that I have ever read. Like, I don't consider myself a religious person, but when I read that, I was like, wow, this was transcendental. This was amazing. This was just an amazing piece of work that made me feel calm and, about death, because Phaedo is about when Socrates drinks the Hemlock and finally goes to his end. I mean, that's a piece of philosophy, and to me, that comforted me a lot more about death. Not to knock on our philosophers, or religious people, this is my personal opinion. That comforted me a lot more about death than any religion has. So I would say, in that singular instance, of my opinion, qualified, yes, it comforted me more than any other religion and has ever been available prior.
What's it called?
That's fair
Beta?
enough.
Phaedo.
Beta.
I need to read more Plato. That's on my
I was
list.
going to retort, but in trying to follow Frank's logic, I got lost.
I'm sorry.
He's talking about he's talking about a dialogue by Plato, and I also right now I don't know what he's talking
It's so beautiful.
about because I think I've actually read it, but it was a long time ago. And
That
that was
and,
actually
De Anima by Aristotle is another one that is just, it's on the soul. It's one of those works that you read and you just go, God, these guys were fucking amazing. Like, Ah, I wish they were. I would like to have a drink with these people.
Are they as good as Valhalla though, or even
They're
better?
so much better. They are
The Muslim thing of like
masterpieces.
going to heaven and having how many virgins do you get? Like 30 virgins or something?
Fuck
like
the
that?
virgins. I would take. I
Well,
would
that's the
take
point, I
Plato.
think.
I would take. Yeah, but I would take Plato at that point,
That was-
and
that was
I'd be
very
like, you know what,
correct.
you old
Correct.
man, come here. I'm gonna Roger your Hammerstein. Anywho,
Here's one lesson that I learned, that if somebody asks a question of me and Frank, answer before Frank.
yeah. I'm sorry about that. Ugh.
A lot of these
Oh, don't
questions
hang
do-
your head, Frank. It's okay.
No, that
being
means
you,
if you
man.
don't
Keep being
answer
you.
before Frank, don't try to understand Frank.
I'm sorry.
It's like
think-
God, man. He works in mysterious ways.
Oh, don't you even fucking start. I work in logical ways.
Well, that is subjective.
I have a clear-cut methodology that I have laid down through the ages.
That is subjective,
Since
and
Frege, don't you
it
dare.
might depend on what time of the evening that is, or how many hams have been.
I don't know.
I was just
And
There was a
on that-
question-
And on that note,
Oh, we were asking if belief is more powerful than truth. Yeah.
no,
belief
I
is
was
more
asking what you guys think. I don't think that I know an
Oh,
answer
yeah.
to that question, but
I don't know either.
Well,
I'm
it's
curious what
contingent
you all
upon
think.
our knowledge as any of us are to be recognized as individuals at answering it. But yeah, I mean, I would
No,
say. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Frank.
No, your own rule. You must obey your rule.
Okay. Let's say, for example, that Mithras was a god or child of God that was in your day, and as it turned out, none of the stories about Mithras were true, or at least that's what the majority of people say. So in that case, belief in Mithras as a god was not more valuable than the truth, because Mithras was not God. Does that make any sense?
It's about on par with one of Frank's arguments in terms of making sense, I guess.
Oh, don't you start too now.
It's getting late and I'm getting punchy, and so
I mean, I was just simply
we went to
gonna
we
say-
went to the cancer doctor again
Oh,
today. So
Oh, I'm sorry.
Put
it actually
simply,
got reasonably good
if you-
news. So.
Oh,
put simply,
good.
if you
Great
believe
stuff,
something
Frank.
and it turns out not to be true, what was more valuable, the belief or the truth?
Did the belief have utility? This is where we get into like metaphorical.
It's not a question about utility. I understand that, but it's not a question about utility. Which is more valuable, the belief or the truth?
I would ask you which was more valuable. The
And
belief
of
or
course,
the
that
truth.
also depends on, have you actually established the truth, or have you just established some provisional?
I'm not
some
establishing
provisional-
anything. I'm just saying if you believe something, that I don't think that can be more valuable than the truth.
Belief is
Ever.
something
Okay,
that we
you
can
just
all have, but truth is something that we all need.
I was actually going to use the comparison. I was going to use something that we all deal with very regularly. We were talking about, Craig brought up scientism when I came in, but if you think about a concept like the atom, I'm willing to bet all of you think the atom is an actual thing that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. Although I'm willing to bet
How much-
none of you, if I asked you to distinguish a singular atom, one atom as it is to be paired, could do it right now, could point to it and go, there's one atom. You'd point to a wall, you point to a person, you point to the area or anything like that. Or to deal with things that are less infinitesimal, all of you probably deal with the concept of $1 billion, but none of you ever point to $1 billion or probably even know what that even looks like in singular dollars. You could even start to contextualize that.
Looks
And
a
the
lot
thing-
like Jeff Bezos. What are you talking about?
And that's the thing to me where I look and I go, when we think about truth and justified true belief means the referential properties, as Craig brought up, to the factual world that we're dealing with. Philosophically, that's what we usually use. But to me, belief comes to the properties that you have to be able to say, how do I say this without logic? You have to be able to say that's adequate or sufficient, or it's something that I can grasp. Okay. I can personally, as an individual, going back to religion, when we say individuals would go do away with others that weren't of their exact same religions, call them mythos, and they would call theirs myth or area on personhood and contingents on morality. It has to be something that you can grasp, say that is sufficient, that is something I can understand. All right. It is the modus ponens, which is the logical term for a rule of inference that we use with conditionals of being able to that's where the abstraction pops in your mind into a generalization, where you get it to a point where you can actually contextualize it. Fuck me.
All right, it's okay, Frank. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
I think we're reaching the end here. So, well, any final, you gave us all food for thought here, Frank. So it is
Alright.
valuable.
I'm
so
sorry.
don't worry about it. No, it's valuable, man. Nothing to be sorry about. So, people are going to need something to think about after our discussion is over, you know, all our viewers back home.
Not me. I wanna fall asleep.
Well, Vladimir is going to fall asleep.
Indeed.
It's what, 6 o'clock in the morning for you?
5 p.m. or 5 a.m. Yeah.
Man, you're a hardcore philosopher.
Yeah, that one, Craig.
Vladimir.
I like
So,
the banter between Pierre and Craig. But yeah. All right. So
final remarks.
That was good. Thank you guys for having me today. I appreciate you guys so
I'm
much.
back.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
thanks for joining.
Gary, it was fantastic to have you, man. Thank you for joining us. Hope you join again sometime soon.